Welcome to Gruesome, your horrific true crime podcast. I am Connie, and along with I lost my train of thought, Barbie girl Meg. And tonight she is going to tell us about Bobby Greenlease.
Yay. Before we talk about that, Connie posted something on Spotify, a question asking about the last episode, and
We
you
heard
guys
you.
are mad.
We heard you.
And we honestly feel kind of yucky about it too. So we are adjusting. The world of podcasts is a murky one. It's just you don't always know what's right or what works, and every month and every week we learn a little bit more. So,
And we can kind of, because neither one of us have podcasting experience. And honestly, neither one of us know people close to us who have podcasts. So it's not like we
we're
can be like,
we're
hey,
not like familiar with the people in the industry, you know. I think
yeah.
I
So
think when
we
you
can
think
only,
about podcasts, you think like, "Oh, I bet these people talk." But no. We don't
no.
at least.
And we never wanted to be the people that they were like, "Ugh, that used to be so good, and now they have 5 to 10 ads every 2 minutes," and we can only go by what people in the industry tell us when they're like, "Oh, yeah, no big deal, 5 ads, it's not that big of a deal." And we did
But
that
we don't
last
like
week.
it.
We
We
don't
feel
like
gross
it.
about it.
We did it last week, and we were like, honestly, as soon as I saw all of those reviews and like Meg doesn't really read reviews, but I take every single one to heart and I like listen to the constructive criticism and I messaged Meg and I was like, "Hey, are you good with not doing this? Like 2 to 3, we'll do it like more strategically placed. Like we'll make sure like our back catalog isn't getting like bombarded with all of these ads." And we come to you humbly being like, "Our bad.
Our
Please
bad.
don't
We're
hate
just
us.
learning.
Yeah,
Whoa.
please don't hate us. We're sorry. You know that we are the people that will apologize when we mess up. So this is us apologizing, ensuring you
And
that."
asking for advice, honestly. Like if you have
Yeah,
like what are your suggestions? You know, we're trying to make this stuff for you, but like what do you guys want to hear? Like what if we do ads, what kind of ads do you want to hear? Like hit us up, shoot us a DM, whatever you got.
and starting tomorrow, today, whenever you're listening to this, you're gonna be able to, might be a little while later after the episode comes out, like, later in the day just because of the way YouTube processes things,
Oh yeah,
but
I
we
doubt it'll
are,
be the same day.
yeah, we are throwing our episodes, you'll have the YouTube ads, but we are throwing them up on YouTube. Just popping
So
them
you
on
can listen
there.
through there.
If
Read
you
that
we do
life. It's Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, we have a $1 a month Patreon tier right now where you get ad-free episodes, and that was we call it, like, the no BS tier. You don't get anything else. But to kinda offset, because there's a ton of you that pay a buck a month, and honestly, by the time taxes and stuff come out, we don't really see any of that anyways. But, we're gonna also give you, the $1 tier members, access to our live stream hangout every month.
Which is our
Um,
favorite part of the
it's our
month.
favorite part of the month. It was a hoot last week, so,
Yeah, Connie is you're a wild man.
yeah, I drank too much and I was having echoes. It was a weird night. It was a weird night.
It was it was a fun one.
But,
But
yes,
yeah.
so we come to you with your altar begging for forgiveness. I am once again coming to you asking for your support.
Thank you guys. We appreciate you when you even if you get annoyed with us whenever you come back around. We Thanks. You're cute. All of you.
Love ya.
Okay. Episode?
Yes.
So this episode has big like Lindbergh kidnapping vibes. Okay? I'll
Ooh, that
preface it
was one
with
of my
this.
first true crime cases I've read about.
That that you got into. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
such an interesting one. So the triggers, I suppose, are crimes against children. And crime that occurs at a school.
Oof, that's a tough one.
It is, and especially in this world. On September 28th, 1953, it was a normal day at the French Institute of Notre Dame de Sion in Kansas City, Missouri.
But I
In
okay.
19 what?
I'm gonna stop you because that is not where I expected that
Where
location to be.
that to
I was
be,
like,
I
"Oh, we're
know.
going to Paris this week."
We're
And then you
going
said Kansas City. I
Europe.
was like, wasn't expecting that.
Nope, it is a school in Missouri, so good for you, Kansas City. In 1953, as we know, the world was a much different place. Adults were maybe wrongfully so, they were just more trusting of other adults. And that's probably why we don't trust anyone else anymore because we've like, you know what? No, we've learned better. But when a strange woman came to the front door of the school at 10:55 on September 28th, no one really questioned her intentions. This mystery woman explained that she was there to pick up Robert, lovingly called Bobby, Cosgrove Greenlease Jr. And the teachers were kind of wary. They didn't know her, but she convinced both the staff and Bobby that she was there to pick him up. She did draw attention to herself because the mystery woman seemed anxious. She was described as fidgety and nervous by school personnel, but she told them that the situation was serious. She said that she was Bobby's aunt and that his mother had suffered a heart attack. She
Ooh.
said Bobby's mother was in the hospital and he needed to come with her immediately. And Bobby kind of calmed the teacher's suspicions after he was pulled from class and brought to the front office because the woman got down on his level and explained, "Hey, you need to come with me." And Bobby was a trusting little boy. Like when an adult told him to do something, he did it. Like most 6-year-olds, they trusted and believed the adults. He trusted and believed the adults that took the time to speak with him. And Bobby's parents told everyone how he was just an easygoing little boy who never gave them any problems. He was described by his teachers as happy and always striving to please, and he always did what he was told. So, after hearing about his mom and how he needed to go with this woman, Bobby took the hand of the mystery woman and left. Personnel claimed that they didn't think Bobby would have been so easygoing about leaving with this woman if he didn't know her. They were like, "Oh, well, he went with her and he was fine with it. He didn't seem weird. He just left." And after Bobby Greenlease left the French Institute with his quote unquote aunt, who she claimed to be, Sister Moreland, one of the nuns at the school, later recalled that just Bobby went to her with no hesitation. They walked out the front door. The woman had an arm around his shoulder and she was holding his other hand, and they entered a taxi. Bobby showed no fear or confusion. At 11:30, Sister Marthana called the Greenlease home to ask about Mrs. Greenlease. But to her surprise, Mrs. Greenlease answered the phone. So this is like 30 minutes later. She calls the house. She's like, "You know what? We're going to call the house, see what's going on."
Yeah, yeah.
And Mrs. Greenlease answered the phone. So imagine her surprise when she learned that she was perfectly fine. But Mrs. Greenlease was now no longer fine. She immediately called her husband, Robert, and he rushed home from work while Mrs. Greenlease alerted the Kansas City police. Shortly after, the police chief alerted the FBI because in the span of just 30 minutes, it became very clear that this sweet little Bobby Greenlease had been abducted by this mystery woman. The woman who had left with Bobby had entered a cab, so investigators started by tracking down the cab driver, Willard Pearson Creech. He was a cab driver, he was working with the Toadman Cab Company of Kansas City, Missouri, and he was totally compliant, absolutely willing to help in any way that he could. He told investigators that that morning a woman had entered his cab asking to be taken to the school, And the description that Creech gave fit the woman who had taken Bobby. Before exiting the cab after he stopped in front of the school, she had told Creech to wait for her in his taxi outside the front doors. She said that she also needed to go to the Cat's drugstore at Main and Westport in Kansas City. Only 11 minutes after stopping in front of the school, the woman came out with the young boy fitting the description of Bobby Greenlease. Willard Creech told police that he last saw the pair stopped at the back of an early 1950s blue vehicle with Kansas license plates. But why?
Yeah,
Why
it's
would someone kidnap a 6-year-old little boy and just take them from their school? The Greenlease family quickly learned why because they received their first ransom letter just a few hours after Bobby was kidnapped. The letter was postmarked at 6 p.m. and designated for special delivery. It made the intentions of the kidnappers very clear. The demand was for $600,000 in 1953 money.
that's a lot of money.
It's $5 million in today's money. It's a lot of money. $600,000 placed in a duffel bag with no bills larger than 20s. The kidnappers promised the safe return of Bobby within just 24 hours, contingent upon receiving all of the demanded ransom money with no little tricks attempted by investigators. This letter was the first of several. They received as many as 6 ransom letters and 15 phone calls.
Jesus.
The next ransom letter was much more chilling. The next communication between the kidnappers and the Greenleases was sent via a letter on September 29th, the very next day. It was postmarked for 9:30 p.m. and once again sent special delivery. The letter contained a Jerusalem medal that Bobby always wore and again called for $600,000 to be given for the safe return of Bobby. The ransom note said that Bobby was safe, but he was becoming quite homesick and wanted to see his mommy, which is really sad.
Yeah, that's awful.
The phone calls kept coming in, and there is a transcript of one of them where the man on the line calls himself M. So Mrs. Greenlease answers. She says, "Hello, this is Mrs. Greenlease." And he replies, "M speaking." She says, "We have the money, but we must know that our son is alive and doing well. Could you at least give me that? Can't you give me something that will assure that?" M says, "This is a reasonable request. To be completely frank with you, this boy is driving us nuts. We couldn't possibly risk taking him to a phone." Mrs. Greenlease says, "Well, I can only imagine. Can you do this then? Can you ask him 2 questions? Give me the answer to the 2 questions." "Well," Mrs. Greenlease says, "if I have the answer to these 2 questions, I would trust and know that my son is alive and well." And so he says, "All right." And she says, "Ask him the name of our driver in Europe from this summer." He says, "All right." And the second question is, "What did you build with the monkey blocks in your playroom the last night you were home with us? If you can get those answers for me, I will feel better. I will feel relieved. You know that this is the only thing that I want." And M says, "We have the boy. He's alive and well. Believe me, he's literally driving us crazy." And she's like, "Yes, he's a very active little boy." And he's just keeps saying that he's driving us crazy. And that just continued. Like, you can tell that the people on this phone call are really delighted by these phone calls. They deliberately extended negotiations and contacted them multiple times because they thought it was funny.
That's sick.
It's super sick. And the story about Bobby Greenlease and his abduction attracted national media attention. The entire country was terrified for his parents and screamed for the safe return of little Bobby. No one wanted him home more than his mom and dad, and they did pay that ransom, which at the time was the largest ransom in American history. Because, again, $600,000 in 1953 money is $5 million today. The final communication from Bobby's abductors was a phone call on at 1 a.m. on October 5th, 1953, directly to the Greenlease residence. Again, the family was assured that Bobby was safe. They told them that they had received the ransom money, and they promised that Bobby would be released within 24 hours. But this was the last time they spoke with him. The abductors, Carl Hall and Bonnie Heady, never actually had any intention of returning Bobby to his family. Bonnie was the mystery woman who had taken Bobby Greenlease from his school, only a few miles away where they met up with Carl Austin Hall. Bonnie and Bobby got into a Plymouth station wagon with Carl and traveled to Johnson County, Kansas. And it was here that Carl Hall shot Bobby Greenlease with a Smith & Wesson .38 caliber revolver the very same day he was taken from his school.
Oh my god.
But these negotiations were going from the 28th until October 5th.
That's
So they just
gross.
continued to give these parents hope and it, like, to steal their money.
And I don't know if I missed this, but were they like a well-off family? Were they well known?
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you in just a second
Oh,
here.
okay.
They actually, in the next paragraph. Carl Hall was the son of a prestigious St. Louis lawyer. He never had to work for a living. His father passed away in 1946 and left him a fortune of $200,000. So, like, if $600,000 is $5 million, like $200,000 should be enough to last you
It's like
for
over
you
a
to live
million dollars. Yeah.
comfortably. Yeah. But Carl blew through that whole thing. And after he lost that money, he got a job. Psych, he did not get a job. He started robbing taxi cab drivers. And he was eventually arrested for this. When he was arrested, he had stolen a whole $38. He was tried and found guilty of robbery and had to serve 16 months in a state prison. But he was released on April 24th, 1953, only 5 months before Bobby's abduction. While serving his 16-month sentence at the Missouri State Prison, Hall had already started planning the kidnapping and murder of Bobby Greenlease. Bobby was the son of one of the wealthiest men in Kansas City, Missouri. Robert Cosgrove Greenlease Sr. owned a car dealership and had gained a very large hunk of his fortune via the introduction of General Motors to the Midwest. Carl had gone to military school with Bobby's adopted brother. So he knew of Bobby and he knew of Robert. And he also grew up in wealth. So he knew of the people in the area that were wealthy. On April 24th, 1953, Carl Hall stepped out of prison and into the arms of Bonnie. Bonnie Brown Heady was 41 years old at the time and recently widowed. Bonnie had been a gun smuggler in the 30s, and it was in this line of work that she had met a bank robber named Dan Heady. Dan was a smuggler, a bank robber, just a real swell guy from the late 20s to the late 30s. Dan married Bonnie in 1935, and he had been arrested many times, and eventually, in an attempt to escape from prison, he was gunned down by the police.
Oof.
Bonnie had only ever heard of Carl, but she was just like, yep, this is the guy for me. So when he met her outside of prison, he had never actually met her before. And she just walked up to him and like kissed him. But his reputation preceded him, I guess. So she took him to her house in St. Joseph, Missouri, and the two of them hatched this plan to kidnap Bobby in between their heroin use and rampant drinking. Hall had planned out most of the major details in prison, and Heady was now helping with the details like, okay, how are we going to actually get the ransom money without authorities intervening? So the Greenleases had paid the money in full to the kidnappers, completely unaware that Bobby had already been murdered on the day of the abduction. After receiving the ransom money, Carl Hall and Bonnie Heady drove 380 miles to St. Louis, Missouri. Hall was extremely paranoid. He was certain that the authorities were after him. Spoiler alert, they were. And to ease his paranoia, Hall purchased two metal suitcases to safely store 300,000 of the $600,000 he had in cash because that's two suitcases. Yep. The money had come in like a duffel bag, and so he had thrown the duffel bag with $300,000 in cash in it into an ash pit near St. Louis to hide it.
Jeez.
He was like, because he was paranoid, he was like, "They're on to me, I better hide this half of the money." To hide out, Hall and Heedy had rented an apartment on Arsenal Street in St. Louis. So late on October 5th, Carl and Bonnie arrived at that apartment in St. Louis. And Bonnie at the time was absolutely wasted. And within minutes, she had passed out in the apartment. And that was exactly what Carl had wanted to happen because as soon as she was asleep, Carl took the money and left. He put $2,000 in her purse and just got out of Dodge.
Dipped with the rest of it. What a fucking troll.
Yeah. And not to mention, like, the fact that half of it is just in a duffel bag, and she probably knows where that duffel bag is.
Yeah.
Like, logic's not logicking. The next day, on October 6th, Hall went to a local hardware store and purchased 2 garbage cans and a shovel. He was still growing increasingly suspicious and paranoid of authorities finding out who he was and tracking him down. So he got a rental car and drove with his garbage cans and shovel to the Merrimack River in St. Louis County because he was going to find a place to bury his money. And
Jeez.
he was unsuccessful in that as well. So he just left the garbage cans and went back to his new location, the Coral Quartz Motel. That's where he was staying, and his paranoia was literally ripping his brain apart. He was suspicious of anyone who even looked in his direction. So that afternoon, he decided he was going to leave the motel and go to a different hotel called the Townhouse in St. Louis and get a different room. He called a taxi to take him to the Townhouse Hotel, and on the afternoon of October 6th at approximately 3:30 p.m., St. Louis police received a phone call from John Oliver Hager. Hager was a driver for the Ace Cab Company in St. Louis, and the information he provided to police led to the arrest of Carl Hall on the evening of October 6th, 1953, at the Townhouse Hotel. Because probably traveling with 2 suitcases full of cash just isn't the best idea. Like, can you imagine just
Yeah.
2 full suitcases? "Hold on, sir." He opens it up, no clothes, just money.
And, like, I don't understand why they had to murder him. Like, they were paying the ransom. Just let him go back.
Yeah, but they had murdered him before they had even sent their first ransom letter.
They're gross.
Yeah, they are gross. So, when they arrested Hall, he was like, "My name is John James Byrne." But later that evening, Hall led police to Arsenal Street to the apartment where Bonnie was staying, and police entered the residence in the late hours of October 6th, and Bonnie was arrested as well. And so began the interrogations by the FBI. Hall was interrogated numerous times and put together this illustration of his involvement. And he insisted that all $600,000 of the ransom money was in his possession. It wasn't. And he admitted to most of the allegations, and he admitted to the planning and abduction of Bobby. He also admitted to burying Bobby Greenlease on Bonnie Heady's property. He even admitted that he had picked up the ransom money. He did not, however, admit to the actual murder of Bobby Greenlease. Carl Hall told police that Bobby had been murdered by a guy named Tom Marsh.
Oh,
I don't know where
likely.
that. Yeah, likely story, Carl. Carl Hall said that he and Heedy kidnapped Bobby Greenlease, and afterward they had given the boy to Tom Marsh. The couple had just been middlemen in a scheme to extort money from Robert Greenlease Sr. because he owned a very successful car dealership. Tom Marsh had been the one who had killed Bobby, and it was only then that he had agreed to bury the body in a shallow grave by the porch of Bonnie's house. But of course, Tom Marsh is not a real person, and
Yeah.
he was interrogated for hours and eventually broke down and admitted that yes, he and Bonnie were the only parties involved in the abduction and murder. The body of Bobby was discovered by police the next day, October 7th, 1953, in St. Joseph, Missouri. At 8:40 a.m., police found the shallow grave Carl Hall had dug while investigating the residence of Bonnie Heady. The body was discovered buried near the front corner of the porch. Bobby's body was wrapped in plastic bags and covered in lime. The Greenlease family had their dentist report to the location to positively identify the body. And
Oof.
at I know, that's terrible. And at 1:05 p.m. on October 7th, it was officially determined by DNA and dental records that it was the body of Robert Cosgrove Greenlease Jr. During the full examination of the house, investigators found large blood stains on the basement floor and the steps entering the Heady house. Bloodstains were also found on two separate rugs and on one of Bonnie's nylon blouses. This evidence suggested that the body had been moved several times. In addition to the bloodstains, there were several .38 caliber shell casings in the house. The FBI determined that the casings had been fired from a .38 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver, the same revolver that had been found in Carl Hall's possession at the time of his arrest. They also discovered a bullet on the floorboard of the Plymouth station wagon owned by Bonnie Heady, and that had also been fired from the same revolver. The evidence, paired with their confessions, allowed investigators to indict Carl Hall and Bonnie Heady for the murder of Bobby Greenlease. Carl Hall told investigators the events of his murder in full gruesome detail on October 11th. He explained that he and Bonnie had taken the victim from Kansas City, Missouri to Overland Park, Kansas. It was here that Carl Hall murdered Bobby by firing multiple rounds from his .38 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver. Hall then explained that they transported the body of Bobby 45 minutes away to St. Joseph, Missouri, and buried the body near the porch in a shallow grave before planting flowers on top of it. Bonnie Heady made some confessions herself. She admitted to assisting Carl with the ransom letters and providing the instructions of the ransom money drop off to the Greenlease family. Heady did say that she had been the mystery woman who had picked the little boy up from school on the morning of September 28th, and she detailed the lie that she had told the school to convince officials to let Bobby leave with her. Carl Hall and Bonnie Heady were tried on October 30th, 1953, just a month over after their crimes. Judge Albert L. Reeves presided over the case in federal court, and in St. Louis, Missouri, both Hall and Heady entered guilty pleas. On November 19th, the jury deliberated for just 1 hour and 8 minutes after hearing the disgusting details of the case. The jury was responsible for giving a verdict, but the whole nation wanted justice for Bobby. Testimony reports and newspapers revealed that this had been planned, and it had been planned well in advance, and everyone demanded the death penalty. So after the jury's deliberations, both Carl and Bonnie were recommended for the death penalty by the jury. Judge Reeves deliberated for 15 minutes before agreeing that death by execution fit the crime, and he sentenced them both to be executed on December 18th of that same year. Judge Reeves said, "It is the most cold-blooded, brutal murder I have ever tried." And Bonnie Heady famously sneered, "I'd rather be dead than poor," after the sentence announcement.
Ugh.
Yeah. On October 18th, 1953, Carl Hall and Bonnie Heady were executed in the gas chamber, less than 3 months after the kidnapping and murder of Bobby Greenlease. Carl Hall was pronounced dead at 12:12 a.m., and Bonnie Heady was pronounced dead just 20 seconds later. I think that's so crazy that they were found, convicted, and sentenced to the death penalty and executed in 3 months.
Yeah. They didn't waste any time with that.
Absolute like that a world I can't imagine a world in when that would even happen anymore. Because there would be
Mm,
appeals and there would be
yeah.
a million other things stopping it from happening, and I know like, I am not particularly pro death penalty, but just the fact that it was like, bam, 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 done, showed how outraged everyone was over this murder.
Yeah, it's like they were setting a precedence. They were like, "You cannot come to Missouri and murder children."
Do not fuck with Missouri. You have been warned. There's actually a little bit more. So, officially, only half of that $600,000 ransom has ever been recovered by authorities.
I gotta go to
Um,
Missouri.
so they found the duffel bag in the ash pit, but investigators were trying to locate the rest of the money because the 2 suitcases were gone. They had arrested him at his hotel, but the suitcases were never brought into police headquarters at the time of that arrest.
Oh, I know where that money went.
Well, they thought they did too. They had 0 evidence. I will say this, 0 evidence, but the state pursued charges against Lieutenant Louis Ira Shoulders and Patrolman Elmer Dolan, the men who made the arrest, for stealing the suitcases full of money during that arrest. Because that was the only feasible explanation for them. That was like, this is the only thing it could have been. So you guys are going to jail. Shoulders was found guilty on April 15th, 1954, and sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. And Elmer Dolan was tried on March 31st and found guilty, sentenced to 2 years in federal prison. Both were convicted of perjury, and they just served their time and returned to the St. Louis area. But Lieutenant Shoulders passed away May 12th, 1962, and Elmer Dolan was actually pardoned by President Lyndon B. Johnson on July 21st, 1965, because of the lack of evidence and the fact that they now believe that they just picked them and convicted them so that they could close the case. They were like, "Nope, we're done with this. We
Yeah,
just
because it
need to
could have been
find."
anyone. It could have been like
It could have been people that worked at the hotel.
that's what I was thinking. Like, that's what I was thinking. So they
They were
got
like, "That
arrested.
bellhop is living the good life now."
Yeah, he didn't even put a 2-week notice in.
He was just like, I gotta go," and he disappeared to the beaches of Mexico. He
Well, because
Shawshanked that.
everybody knew they paid the ransom. Everybody knew they paid the ransom. So
Yeah.
if you're just some like bellhop delivery, whatever, or just like some maintenance man or housekeeper or front desk person, and you hear, "Oh, you're under the arrest for the abduction of Bobby Greenlease," and they're like, "Wait a second, the money is here."
It's right here. I can smell it. Yeah, someone did very well for themselves that day, but I don't think that it was these police officers.
No, that's
And, you know,
unfortunate. They were just trying to do their job.
they were, and then they were like, "You know what? You guys, wrong place, wrong time. You are gonna go to jail." I mean,
We
it
need a
wasn't that
patsy, and
long.
you look like a patsy.
Yeah, it wasn't that long, but it's still,
That's a
like,
long time, though, to be in, like, a federal
3 years
prison.
in jail is not for the faint of heart, I don't believe. I don't know, I've never been to jail yet. So,
There's
we,
still time.
there's still time for me to experience that firsthand. I might be driven to the brink of craziness at some point. Who knows?
I did an
Um,
escape room from jail once, like, escape from jail escape room, and that was
I've never done an escape room. Did you like it?
I was obsessed.
Did you win? Did you
Yeah,
escape?
with, like, 5 seconds to go.
Oh my gosh, tell me about it. What's it like?
Well, we did one in Gatlinburg, and that one had I guess there are some escape rooms that you do that are, if you ask for hints, that takes time like, your available time off, and this was not one of them.
Oh, so
So
did you ask for hints?
yeah, because like, we had to work together because there was only 4 of us, so, like, we worked together with, like, on our side, there was 4 of us, and then you get, like, another group that, comes in too, and, like, so you have to work with people you don't know.
No, I don't like that. They're gonna
I think
sabotage me.
if you go in a big enough group, you don't have to, but, like, it was just me and my husband, so, like, we just got kinda
So you
throwing
needed
people.
some help. You were like, "Look, I'm gonna need some backup on this.
Yeah, because
Just
my
send
husband just stood
literally
back
anyone
there.
in here."
But it makes you use your brain so much, and, like, when you start to, like, see the clues pieced together, you're like it is intoxicating.
I am a detective. This is everything I ever dreamed.
Mhm, mhm. My husband just stood back there like a doof, like, he was like, "I'm gonna let her do her thing," but it
Well,
was
he
dope.
probably would have induced some kind of rage if he had interrupted you. Like, if you're, like, hyper focused on, like, solving it and you're like, "This, it's clicking into place," and he's like, "Hey, what about?" You're like,
And I'm
"No,
like, "Fuck off,
you're wrong."
Terry, I'm escaping from prison."
That's hilarious. I would love to do one sometime. I think it sounds pretty fun.
I would love to do one with you. We should do that.
We should do an escape room. Um, I like watching TikToks of the people who run the escape rooms when they have to, like, sneak in and, like, move clues around while you're in there. Like, that's scary to me. That's like, low key. That's horror movie stuff. Like, what
Mhm.
if I could see a horror movie where they, like, go into an escape room and, like, the
Oh,
person
don't do
it's like
that.
it's pretty much Saw though, right?
Yeah, that's
Saw is
Saw.
the ultimate escape room. Actually, never mind. That movie's been made. I take it back.
But if you did start it like, if you had a movie where it was just, like, a group of teenagers, young adults going into an escape room, and then people start getting knocked off one by one, and they're like, "Oh, it's just the game."
It could be like that's like Clue, you know?
Yeah. Oof.
It could
Woof.
work. It could work. Someone can have that movie idea. That's all yours. But I will tell you, when it releases, they're gonna be like, "This is just a knockoff of Saw." It's like if
Yeah.
Saw and Clue had a baby.
Yeah. Saw, Clue, you get Escape.
That's hilarious.
Oof.
I know,
Man,
I thought about the Lindbergh case, and I was looking at it, and it's, like, on the list, right, to cover, but this one popped up when you look up that, and I was like, "Oh, I've never heard of this," and
I've never heard of this
down
one either.
down the rabbit hole I went, as we know.
I feel so awful for his parents.
Yeah, that's I ca and just the fact that and his teachers, everyone in his
Mhm.
life who, you're sending your kid to school and you're like, "Oh, you have a good day," and then you get a phone call like, "Hey, are you in the hospital? What's going on?" And just like I can imagine how a stomach might just drop and be like, "No,
Oh, yeah.
that's so scary."
But that's why they have the rules like they do now. Like our oldest needed picked up from school and my husband went to pick him up, but in the time since he had last been seen like at the school, he grew his beard.
Mhm.
So they didn't recognize him. And they were like, "Okay, yeah, 1 second. We'll be right back." And they went into another office and they were like, "Excuse me, do you know that this man is here?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's my husband. You're good."
He just looks weird now. I can't
I
even
didn't
remember him without a beard.
I can. It's a vivid, weird memory for me that I
You're like, "I wish I couldn't remember him without a
he
beard."
has such a baby face without it. He looks like a whole different person. I'm definitely
Ugh,
team beard though.
I wish I could grow a beard, honestly.
I probably could.
I went to the trampoline park and this teenage boy, was, like, hooking up my harness so I could do, like, the sky, obstacle course, and he was like, "Do you have a cleft lip?" And it caught me off guard, 1, because normally teenage boys don't ask me that. Um, but I was like, "Yeah, I do." And he was like, "My dad has one."
Aw, sweet boy.
It was so funny to me, like, I was, like, legitimately so I started talking to him, and I was like, "Oh, yeah? Does your dad have a mustache?" And he was like, "Yeah. How did you know that?" I was like, "Normally, when dudes have a cleft lip, they can grow a mustache, and they usually will grow a mustache to hide, like, their scarring or their covers." I was like, "But I can't do that. I can't grow a mustache to hide my scar," so I thought it was funny, it was really cute, though, that he was like, I don't know, I've
Dude, I'm a
when
hairy bitch,
teenage
I could grow a mustache.
Like, I can grow one, but it's not enough to cover anything. It's gonna be like a dirt stash. Like, I'm gonna look like the guy singing that Wheatus song, "Teenage Dirtbag." Like, that's what I picture. Just like I'm gonna look like that teenage boy's mustache.
I feel like I could grow a pretty gnarly one.
I would love for you to try. Like,
No,
maybe
I
when you
can't.
have you work from home, no one would know.
No, because when, I had my 7-degree sunburn on my face, I couldn't wax because I was really nervous that it was
Oh, you
like, it was,
wax.
like, fresh yeah, I'm a waxer. It was like a
No
fresh
way.
baby skin type thing, and I was like, "I don't know how sensitive the skin is." I was only washing my face with, like, Honest brand shampoo at that point, 'cause I was like, "I don't know what to do. This is so new to me, it's all
Just like using
it
baby
hurts so
shampoo.
bad." And my husband was like, "Alright, Connie, like, I'm not trying to be that person, like, you do you, but I can see your mustache from across across the living room." And my son was like, "Oh, you have a bigger mustache than I do."
Like, that's not a compliment, sir,
I was like, "Are you
for
jealous?
you.
You jealous?"
I'm a razor girl. I just shave that thing right off,
No,
and
I
it starts
can't.
to
I used to when I was in, like, 5th grade and this kid
in 5th grade, I wasn't even allowed to shave in 5th grade.
no, my mom didn't know, but a kid or 'cause he, like we were playing mat ball in 5th grade, and I had never been self-conscious about anything in my entire life, and he was like, "Oh, look at you. You have a mustache." And I felt like I wanted to die because he said it in front of a bunch of people, and I went home that day, and like a true man, I just shaved.
Like a true man, I got the razor out. You know, I think mine was 5th or 6th grade when, a boy pointed out my mustache as well. I was, like, sitting across from him on the bus, like, I was in one seat and he was the other, and he was like, "Hey, you got more of a mustache than I do." Exactly those words, and I was like, "Okay," and I said exactly what I just said. "That doesn't sound like that's very cool for you." And I looked out the window angrily.
34-year-old Connie wants to look at little Corey and be like, "Yeah, my balls have dropped further too, you twat." Like,
Like, just, "You wanna fight?" That's
that was
okay,
a
you know, I
traumatizing memory for me. Like, I did
you
not
just
know oof.
the person who said it to me, had the locker next to them for every year of school, from 6th grade until senior year.
Now
He
I'm
was the
thinking in my
locker right
head,
next to
like,
me.
who would have been around you?
I'll tell you after, but
Okay. This
but
kid
every
ugh.
I thought about it every day too, and I saw him like, "What an asshole."
I
Mm.
had the I bring up this story about mat ball in 5th grade and this kid to my boys because when they're talking about, like, they trash talk, like, their friends and stuff, like, whatever. We were talking about, like, not talking like that to girls because, like, if you hit on something, like, you're trying to be funny, but it's something they're insecure about, they're gonna remember it. Like, I cannot let this go. That was my very f and I think it's because it was my very first taste of being insecure about something, and I felt sick when he said it. Like, I felt
Oh,
physically ill, like, nervous, real sweaty. I didn't wanna go back to school.
poor baby.
And
Kind
now,
of
like,
had
I
a
just wanna be like
similar talk recently where I was like, look, if you're talking to people and you want to point something out, if they can't change that in 5 seconds, you don't say anything. If you're
mhm,
like,
that's our
hey, you got
rule.
some stuff in your teeth, they can pick that out in 5 seconds. But if you say, hey, you have a big forehead, they can't change their forehead. Don't talk about it. Leave it alone. That's not your place to say anything about their bodies or how they look.
Yep.
I got real impassioned about it. And
I my oldest has a friend who we were at my middle son's soccer game this weekend, and this kid is usually the sweetest boy. Like, he is one of my favorite kids that comes over,
Usually, we know
usually.
something's coming.
But we are sitting there, and one of the girls on the other team was a lot taller than the rest of the kids. And he loudly pointed it out, and when I tell you this kid is not my kid and I tore his ass a new one, like, I am surprised because I was like, "Hey, you're not gonna talk about her like that, or you're not gonna be here. You guys can walk back to my house, but you're not gonna come to a game that I'm at and talk to people like that." And he was like, "I'm sorry." I'm like,
Mm.
"You think," I said, "You think she doesn't know she's the tallest kid out there?" I was like, "What if her parents are sitting right here? Because you're being loud about this." I was like, like, you think maybe she's not, like, maybe she's insecure about it and you're being a jerk." And I think I've got a little triggered because, like, my daughter is that tall girl. You know, she's the tall one in all of it. She's, like, taller than everybody in her classes. My husband was like, "I think you went too far." I was like, "I bet he never comments on anything about a girl
I
like
bet
that
he
again,
never
though."
fucking speaks again.
He's like,
Not
"I turn
around
around,
you
tell
for
her."
sure.
But that was the
Oh my.
second, like, teenage boys are like, all they don't, and it's not a malicious thing, it's like, they just don't think about it. Like, they're like, "Oh, wait, huh? Wait, I'm not allowed to say that? She can't hear me. Oh, she probably could."
She's just gotten really good at ignoring you, ignoring people. And she shouldn't have to.
No. Like, I wanted to look at him like, "Are you jealous, sir?"
Young man. It's life is weird. Like of all of the memories we have our entire lives, like we both have the one where someone told us we have a mustache. Like just locked in for the very first time. Uh, that's so like sad, honestly.
It make
I
like,
read something that you lose a lot of like most of your memories before age 10. Like you remember pretty much nothing.
I
Like I'm
remember
pretty sure
that
I was
one.
like 9 when that happened and it's in there.
Yeah, I also have really, really thick eyebrows. Like, if I don't do, and had
They're
someone told
power
me
brows.
like, "When you get older, these are gonna be the shit, don't change anything about them." But I had a unibrow when I was, like, 3, and it was always something, like, after the mustache got pointed out to me, I realized, like, the eyebrows, and I was like, "Oh god, what do I
It's a
do?"
spiral. It's a
And
slope.
my mom was like, "You can't wax your eyebrows until middle school." And, like, now I'm looking at, like, my daughter, and I'm like, "Well, whenever you want. I'm not gonna tell you you need to, but if you decide you want to, like, yeah, let's do it."
Go nuts.
I'm not gonna do it, but I'll take you to somewhere to do it.
When I wanted to shave, I remember I came to my dad with like a plan. I was like, "Dad, hello. I am here to make a bargain with you," which
It's
is
like
how I
Shark
always
Tank,
it
the
literally
Shark
was
Tank of
like
shaving.
it was the Shark Tank of me trying to shave my legs. And I walked into the living room and I remember it so vividly because I was like, I'm going to fight for my right to shave my legs. I walked in, I was like, Dad, I'm on the swim team. I'm in sixth grade this year, which means I'm in middle school, and most of the other people on the team shave their legs. I think it's appropriate if I shave my legs too. And he was just like, fine. And I walked out of there triumphant.
Like, "Yes,
Triumphant
just made a deal with the sharks. I'm good to go.
with a disposable razor.
I'm gonna cut
Let's
the shit
go.
out of myself."
uh, I hate shaving now, though. I fucking hate it. It's the
Oh,
worst.
like I said, I'm a hairy bitch, so
Oh, man. Yeah, I think that's good. I think you
yeah, we're
guys
good. We're good. You guys know way
don't
more
feel
about
the
us now.
need to shave this summer, okay? Let it grow if you don't like shaving. Go nuts. No one
Or
cares.
get a gnarly sunburn, because now the past since I've gotten home from Florida, I haven't been able to shave because when I shave, it's skin. It's like peeling skin, and I'm like,
It's
"Ugh,
just flesh.
just
Blah.
too much for me." All right, guys.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, see you next week.
Bye.